Hi folks, welcome to the channel. Being that this is my first time actually narrating and appearing in one of my videos, I thought I would take the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Roger Incarnation. Back in the mid-80s, I served in the U.S. Navy aboard the aircraft carrier USS Constellation. I was a catapult captain, which means I had a crew of about 8 to 10 folks, and we would launch airplanes from the aircraft carrier. So, all that being said, let's get into the episode. Today, we are actually going to take a tour of a U.S. Navy destroyer. The USS John Paul Jones came into Seattle in early August for Fleet Week. So, all that being said, let's get started. So let's talk about the ship's namesake, John Paul Jones. He was a Scottish-American naval captain who was the United States' first well-known naval commander in the American Revolutionary War. He is sometimes referred to as the father of the American Navy and is renowned for his victory over British ships off the coast of England. He is quoted as having said, "I have not yet begun to fight," while standing on the deck of the Bon Homme Richard when his enemies asked for his surrender. After he died, he was buried and later exhumed and transferred and buried at the U.S. Naval Academy. Let's talk about the ship itself. The USS John Paul Jones is an Arleigh Burke Flight 1 class destroyer. It was commissioned on December 18, 1993. It is currently homeported in Everett, Washington. The ship's motto is "In Harm's Way." The ship is 505 feet long, displaces 8,184 tons, has a 59-foot beam. The John Paul Jones has a speed in excess of 30 plus knots. It's 59 foot wide and has a crew of 281 personnel. Here we can see the ship's brow. The brow consists of a bridge-like structure that is laid in between the ship and the pier with a ladder leading up to the bridge. It allows personnel to safely board and disembark the ship. Here we can see the ship's quarterdeck. The quarterdeck acts as an exterior office, if you will, whereby personnel who are assigned to the ship can check in and check out whenever leaving or arriving at the ship. It is usually manned by both the senior enlisted and a senior officer. This is a picture of firefighting equipment that was laid out for display for those touring the ship. Now, what I want to direct your attention to is you can see a small glass enclosure on the wall opposite of where the photo was taken from. This enclosure is actually manned by a person who is directing the helicopter into landing position while coming aboard the ship. Next, we move up one level to where the vertical launch system is located. John Paul Jones has a total of 90 vertical launch cells total, 29 aft, which is what you're looking at now, as well as 61 cells on the forward deck. Missile varieties launched from the cells include the RIM 156, the SM-2s, Tomahawks, as well as ASROCs, which are anti-submarine rockets. Let's talk about the Harpoon missile system, which the John Paul Jones carries. You can see that it's actually located just forward of the vertical launch system. In this particular photo, the system has not been installed. You simply see the racks that hold the system in place. In the second photo, you actually see the canisters, which hold the missiles. Now, when a missile is activated, it simply flies out of the tube and proceeds towards its intended target. Here we have the Mark 32 triple torpedo tube. The John Paul Jones actually has two of these systems located both port and starboard, thus enabling them to engage targets on either side of the ship. Now, located just above the Harpoon racks is the 20mm Phalanx CWIS, or Close-In Weapon Support System. So let's talk about the CWIS for just a minute. the close-in weapon support system. So this is a point defense weapon, meaning that when all else has failed and a missile or an enemy jet has made it through the outer defenses and is closing in on the carrier, this is the weapon that the Combat Information Center will employ to destroy the missile or the jet. The CIWS will typically fire up to 100 depleted uranium rounds at the incoming target. Now, the last thing I want to say about it is if you ask anybody on the ship, hey, what is that thing up there? Everybody will say unequivocally, that's R2-D2. Because if you look at a picture of R2-D2 and a picture of the CIWS, they're almost identical. Before we start moving towards the front of the ship, let's quickly go over the radars you see above R2-D2. These are the ANSPG-62 fire control radars. What they do is they illuminate the target for the SM-2 missiles that we spoke about earlier when we were talking about the vertical launch system. As we start to move forward towards the front of the ship, we come across the first of 4 gun mounts that hold the 50 caliber weapon so the ship can address small craft threats. John Paul Jones actually has 4 of these mounts, 2 forward and 2 aft. This is the ship's boat, commonly referred to as the RIB, short for Rigid Inflatable Boat. This boat is commonly used for visit and board parties. Think suspicious vessel on the high seas, drug smuggler, or a pirate. This boat would be used to make contact with such a vessel. It is also used for search operations at sea. Should somebody end up going over the side, this boat would be quickly dispatched to help pull the person out of the water and bring them back to the ship. While standing next to the RIB, if you look to your left, you see these massive structures. These are actually the exhaust ports for the 4 General Electric gas turbine engines that power the John Paul Jones. These engines provide a total of over 100,000 total shaft horsepower. These engines are much like the engines you find on the commercial aircraft that we all fly on. As we reach amidships, you find one of the 2 Mark 38 chain guns that are mounted on the USS John Paul Jones. This gun is a 25mm single-barrel, chain-driven autocannon. It can shoot up to 200 rounds per minute and goes a little bit farther out than your 50 caliber gun that we spoke of earlier. Interestingly, this is the same gun that is found on the U.S. Army's Bradley fighting vehicle. So I want to set up this next bit of footage you're about to see. So we are going to actually walk from amidships, the middle part of the ship, to the very front of the ship where the other VLS launcher is located, as well as a 5-inch gun. So the genius thing that the designers of this ship did was they created a passageway whereby the crew can walk from one end of the ship to the other in an enclosed atmosphere. Keep in mind these ships are quite small compared to aircraft carriers, and when you get in a little bit rougher seas, the waves will slap the ship and actually come over onto the decks. And so by creating this passageway, it allows the crew to traverse from the middle of the ship to the front of the ship safely. I'll briefly hit on some of the equipment that you're going to be seeing that is actually stowed within the passageway as well. We are now standing on the forward end of the ship, and here you can see the large Mark 45 5-inch guns. This weapon fires 16 to 20 rounds per minute. And as the saying goes with regards to the range of the weapon, if you can see it, you can hit it. So just after the 5-inch gun, we have our second VLS system. Remember, this one has 61 cells. And now we turn our attention to the bridge area, the forward superstructure. And I want to point out a couple of items there to you. You could see we have R2-D2, the forward mount. And then to the right of R2-D2, we have what looks like a stop sign on the ship's superstructure. It's tan in color. This is actually a radar. It's the AN Spy 1D 3D radar. This is the key component of the Aegis combat system. The system is computer controlled. It uses 4 other complementary antennas to provide a 360-degree view for the Combat Information Center to process any potential threats to the ship. Here we have 2 different views of the anchor chains associated with JPJ. The John Paul Jones actually carries 2 different anchors, one on the forwardmost portion of the bow and one on the port side of the bow. So I want to introduce this next piece of video. We're actually getting ready to go onto the bridge itself, which is kind of nice when you go on these tours. I want to direct your attention to a couple of different things. The first thing is listen to the sound. At least one of the gas turbine engines was running while we were on the ship, and you can kind of hear that hum in the background. And this is common with all Navy ships. It's just a noisy place to work, if you will, but you learn how to tune it out. One of the first things we will encounter on the bridge is the map plot. That's where they used to lay out the maps and they would plot the ship's course and what have you. They've kind of gotten away from that. Everything is digitized, and when we come around the corner during the video, you'll see the captain's chair, and then you see these other black displays. Those are navigational displays. It's all electronic now. I remember several years ago when I went to visit some ships down in San Diego, the tour guide who worked on the bridge had a standing order from the captain that as long as he was the captain of the ship, they would always have paper charts. Well, that has since gone by the wayside, and paper charts are, few and far between. Everything's electronic now. They still have the ability to track their movement via the stars, and they train to maintain that proficiency. So after we pass the map plot and the CO's chair, we hit the XO's chair. The executive officer is just below the commanding officer. And then you'll see I turn the camera to face the front of the ship, and you can kind of get a view of what it's like to look out over the front of the ship from the bridge. You'll see a little bit of writing on the window. Again, that's navigation related, that they'll write on the windows and what have you. And then in the next part of the video, we actually step out from the bridge to the starboard side of the bridge, and we look down over the ship, and you can actually see the view in relation to from the bridge down to the front end of the ship. Now we have moved to the back of the ship. This is the actual landing pad where the helicopters can come and go. As stated before, JPJ does not actually have facilities for storing helicopters. However, subsequent iterations of the Arleigh Burke class destroyer would be able to accommodate and store helicopters. Finishing up our tour, we see the fantail portion of the ship. As you can see, the ship's name is on the back, and that is true with all Navy ships. And we see the two large antennas which are lowered during helicopter operations, and those are actually radio antennas. So that concludes the tour. I hope you enjoyed the video. Keep in mind, everything that I revealed is open source. Nothing is top secret or anything of that nature. Also, I did not go into details regarding other sensors and weapons that the ship carries because we didn't come across those during the tour. If you enjoyed the video, if you could hit the like button, I'd appreciate it. If you're not already a subscriber, please do so. If you want to support the channel, please hit the super like button. And also, one last thing, I placed a bit of an Easter egg within the video that gives a hint as to what the next episode will be about. Feel free to comment in the comments section if you think you know what it is, and I'll certainly respond. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good day.